Hi everybody, it's Robert Clark. We're following up on the questions we received during the Advisors for Advisors webinar on April 20th about Skype for Business. We had a lot of great questions that came in from the audience, and we're going to answer some of those right now. Hope you enjoy that, and we'll see you in a little bit. So we're going to go over some of the basics of Skype for Business, just to get everybody sort of level set here on this Q&A session. We did review these things during the actual webinar on April 20th. So what is Skype for Business? It is the Office 365 software client for communications. It has chat, it has video communications, it has audio communications, and it also has, in certain versions, a connection to the public switched telephone network, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. It's different than the consumer version of Skype. It looks different, it works differently, but it is interoperable with the consumer version. So they share. Skype for Business and Skype are both owned by Microsoft, and they have been for some time. And they have the same sort of technological underpinnings on infrastructure now. They didn't always, but they do now. And that has allowed Skype for Business and Skype clients to speak together, speak to each other. So when you have Skype for Business, who can you communicate with? Well, you can communicate with others in your firm. That makes sense, right? So you can also communicate with external Skype for Business users, people who have Skype for Business who are not in your company. You can communicate with them via the internet. You can communicate with consumer Skype users. So for an RIA firm, that's pretty important because we might expect individuals to have Skype, but not necessarily have Skype for Business. You can communicate with people who don't have either Skype or Skype for Business via a web link. And the way you would do that, as we demonstrated in the webinar, is you would set up a calendar item or a meeting request, make it a Skype meeting, and that will insert this link. And what that link does is it provides sort of a web version of Skype for people to join the meeting if they don't have their own Skype or Skype for Business client. And as I mentioned a moment ago, you can communicate with the public switch telephone network. You can communicate through Skype for Business right out onto the telephone network with, you have to have an E5 license or some additional features added to your E3 license. And just as a reminder, the E3 license is the one that we generally recommend for RIAs because of the compliance-related features. So our questions came in two broad categories. The computer-to-computer category, if we're just communicating between computers, or if we're communicating with the outside telephone network, the public switch telephone network. A lot of interest in that. That's fairly new. That's come out of preview into general release as of December of 2015, so still coming together on that. So let's do the computer-to-computer questions. And the first question was, is it your computer audio? And the answer is yes, it is. When you're doing computer to computer, it is the built-in audio functionality that's in your computer that's being used. And so yes, it's going out over internet, it's going out of your internet lines, and that's where the communication is coming from. The next question was, do you use a phone or a headset? And that was a great question because you use a headset for this. You don't necessarily use a phone device that's plugged in for the computer to computer. Now here's where it gets a little tricky, and we're kind of jumping ahead. If you're using Skype for Business and connected to the public switch telephone network, then yes, you can connect a phone, a VoIP phone, which is what you might use if you use, I can't think of the name of the service, but they're out there, the ones where, $19.99 a month and your PBX is online. You use a VoIP phone. Same thing. If you're using the PSTN, you can also use a headset as well. How long does the chat window stay open? Which was another great question. That could be a question for maybe, I don't know so much in an RIA firm, but certainly in the medical environment for HIPAA. If you happen to be chatting about a patient or something, you might leave the chat window open and expose PII, personally identifiable information. But how long does the chat window stay open? It stays open for quite some time. It's not going to close down automatically for, and I'm sure there's a setting, I don't know what it is, but it's for many, many minutes. After a certain amount of time of inactivity, Skype for Business will save the transcript of the conversation, and that conversation transcript will get saved if you close the window. That initiates the save as well. Is the Skype meeting link only in Skype for Business? And this question is about, and I mentioned that earlier, if you send a calendar item to someone who may not, or to a group of people, just so you can capture anybody who may not have Skype for Business, it puts that link in so they have that web version of Skype that they can use for the duration of the meeting. Is that link only in Skype for Business? The answer is yes. That's a function of Skype for Business tied to Exchange Online, whether it's Outlook on your computer or Outlook Online, the Outlook web app in Office 365. A few more questions on the computer-to-computer side. When presence says busy, is that based on your calendar? Question mark. Is that based on your calendar? So what we're talking about here are the indicators that are next to every one of your Skype for Business contacts, and then that's called presence, and that was available, busy, do not disturb, or in a meeting. So the question is, was that based on your calendar? And yes, it is. It's definitely based on your calendar. However, the individual on the other end can also set their own status, right? So automatically, Skype for Business connects with Exchange and looks at your calendar and determines when you're available and when you're busy, just based on whether or not you have a meeting at that time, or you have the time blocked out. Okay. The other thing you can do is you can set your own status, particularly if you're working on a project and you don't want to be, you're in a conference and it's do not disturb time. You can set that as well. But then, even if a contact shows busy, can you still instant message them? And the answer is yes, you can. It doesn't mean that the communication channel doesn't work. It's just, it's just an indication that the person has something on their calendar. They're probably busy. And we usually say that the best way to use presence is to take a quick look and determine, how you're going to communicate with somebody. If you have a very quick question, should you pick up the phone and call them? Should you send an email? Can you get away with a chat? If you have a quick question and they're green, they're available, you might be able to just chat it and get an answer, and you can keep working. If it's a little more lengthy and it's not really urgent from a timing perspective, you might send an email. Or if it's detailed, then you definitely want to do a voice communication. And can I run both Skype and Skype for Business at the same time? Another great question. I think that you can. You can have both clients going on your computer, but since Skype for Business is interoperable with Skype, I really don't think that you need to do so. I mean, I think you can get rid of Skype, and just work with Skype for Business going forward. So the next set of questions were about the computer to the PSTN, to the public switch telephone network. Again, it's something that's pretty new, so understandably a lot of questions about this. But let's see what the first one. Can you use it to fax? Great question. I think the answer is no. I don't see any place where you're going to connect a fax machine to anything. Remember, we're not actually connecting to a phone line. We are connecting to your internet connection. And it's going out over the modem. So I don't think so. I don't think the fax runs through Skype for Business or Cloud PBX. Whether or not it can connect to your internet modem, different question, to which I don't know the answer. That's a fax equipment question. What happens to my landline phone number? And let me just finish that. What happens to my landline phone number if I start using Skype for Business as my phone? And that's another great question. So the same process that you need to have a phone number, right? If you're going to connect, if your phone's going to ring in, your phone number is going to ring in Skype for Business, it needs to have a phone number, right? Because the people on the outside have to dial something. So you have two choices. You can get a brand new phone number from Microsoft, and they have those available. Or you can use your existing business phone number, which is probably what most people would use. And the process to move that phone number from wherever it is now, the phone company, a cable, maybe you have a cable phone number, to move it from the cable company, whether it be Optimum around here or Comcast or Cox or Time Warner, you would do the process called porting. And that's the process. It's part of the telecom infrastructure. It's nothing that they haven't done a zillion times before. and it really moves your phone number, the one that's associated with your business, to a different carrier. It works the same for your home or as well, but that's called porting. And there's a process to do that right inside the Office 365 portal. Now, if you have, I think it's 99 or more phone numbers to bring over, slightly different process, but less than 99, you can do it very simply through the Office 365 portal. What type of phone call do you get? That was a question, and I thought that was an interesting one because it was not really clear, but what type of phone call? So I can answer that any way I want, and what kind of phone calls can you make? So you can do domestic calls, you can do international calls, and right now Microsoft has two plans, one with domestic only, and one includes international. We went over the pricing in the webinar, and I'm not going to go over the pricing again here, but they have a pooled minute plans. Now, these are not very robust. I think it's 3,000 pooled minutes that you get with each license. And, it certainly is not the full set of features that you could get from, the telephone company, say. But, this is their first set of offerings out of the gate, and you might expect to see some different things coming down the road. Does it only work with the E5? And the E5, that's another great question. The E5 license is the license that includes everything you need to add this phone calling options to Office 365. You don't need just, you have to use the E5 which has some things, or the E3, and you can do add-ons to E3 is really what I'm trying to say there. You can do some add-ons to E3 and you'll get everything that you need. You'll get all the E3, you'll get the PSTN. It'll cost you a little less than buying the E5 if you don't need all the features of the E5. We did have a couple of more questions here on Skype for Business to the PSTN. Is it simple to sign up for Cloud PBX service? And yes, it is. There were two steps to it. One is you need to subscribe to the service, and if you do that through the administrative portal, subscribe to the service, get the licenses, and then assign those to the users. That's just like every other license in Office 365. So if you've done that for anything else, this won't be that strange to you. And then really to activate it, they do give you nice step-by-step instructions on making sure that you set everything up. You have to assign a number to somebody and put in their emergency information for 911, etc. So that's all laid out in a step-by-step fashion. So is it simple? You can do it. You can follow instructions. If you can follow instructions, you're able to do it. The next thing, the next question was, what happens to my landline phone number? So I'm going to answer this. We sort of answered this, one aspect of this with the porting question a little earlier. So let me just expand on this just a little bit more. So once you move your phone number over, you port your number over into Office 365, that's where it rings. It doesn't ring anywhere else anymore. So two ways to answer this. If I get a new phone number through Office 365 and Skype for Business, do I need my landline phone number anymore? The answer is no. And if you port your number, then it's going to ring into Skype for Business. And it will ring on, quote unquote ring. It will ring on any Skype for Business client that you have open, right? So if your desktop is open and your laptop happens to be open right next to it, you'll see the phone call come in both locations at the same time. Now there are some PBX functions on here, so you do have some call forwarding, some functionality as well. So if it rings for a few times on your desktop and it doesn't get answered, it can automatically go to your cell phone. Or if your Skype for Business client is shut down, it can Skype for Business will automatically transfer it to your cell phone, so you'll get ring through there. Of course, you could put the Skype for Business app on your cell phone. So there are lots of ways to get to communicate here. So, and there are some, we did give a list of the PBX functions that are available right now for Skype for Business. It's not an exhaustive set of functions by any stretch, but it continues to grow, and we expect it to grow over time. So what about compliance and recording of the phone calls, which is a great question, and I'm going to put the slide up here. I hope I get this right. 1, 2, 3, these things are these are the things that we covered during the webinar itself. So IM and chat logs are saved in Exchange. I think we alluded to that a little earlier about the how long is the chat window open. And those are archived just like an email. So if you have whatever your email archiving solution is, if you need to be compliant in that way, then your IM and chat logs are saved that way as well. Which means, if you're sending them to Smarsh, you're sending them to Redtail, just like if your emails go to Redtail, your IM chat logs go to Redtail. Now, meeting recordings or voice recordings, that's different, right? So those get saved in a user-defined location. So what does that mean? It's not auto-archived like an email, okay? It could be on your hard drive. It could be, it could be in the cloud. It could be in any different places, but it's not the same. It's not auto-archived just like an email. There are third-party apps, compliance apps that are available to take these recordings and save them. And you can also share them in you can store them in SharePoint and with write-only user permissions, right? So it gets written once and that's it. And they can be stored in SharePoint. Okay, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned quite a bit about it. Remember, we do these every month, Office 365 for advisors, where you can learn the latest. We can go into some detail, but where you can learn the latest and really how to use it in your RIA firm. Look for that on advisorsforadvisors.com. Thanks very much.